Every experienced sailor knows that the ocean doesn't forgive small mistakes. But what happened to the crew of the Maritime Dawn on November 18, 2019, defied everything maritime experts thought they understood about catastrophic failures at sea. The Coast Guard investigators who examined the wreckage called it the most preventable disaster in modern sailing history. The irony? The component that killed them cost less than $50 to replace. This isn't just another sailing accident story. This is about how a repair so minor, so seemingly insignificant, that 90% of recreational sailors postpone it indefinitely, became the single point of failure that sent a beautiful 47-foot yacht and 2 experienced mariners to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean in less than 4 minutes. If you own a boat, if you sail, if you dream of blue water cruising, what you're about to discover will change how you think about maintenance forever. Because the terrifying truth is this: the same component that failed on the Maritime Dawn is probably deteriorating on your boat right now, and you don't even know it. The mystery that consumed the sailing community for 8 months wasn't just how such an experienced crew could perish so quickly. It was how a boat, equipped with every modern safety system, inspected just 3 weeks before the incident, and sailed by 2 veterans with a combined 40 years of offshore experience, could simply vanish without a distress call, without deploying emergency equipment, without even enough time to send a final radio message. The answer, when investigators finally found it, was so shocking that it prompted the Coast Guard to issue an unprecedented safety bulletin to every registered boat owner in North America. Robert Bob McKenzie, 54, wasn't your typical weekend sailor. A former merchant marine officer turned marine electronics engineer, Bob possessed the kind of methodical, technical mind that approached every aspect of sailing with scientific precision. His workshop in San Diego was legendary among local sailors. Walls lined with perfectly organized tools, maintenance logs that read like engineering manuals, and spare parts inventoried with military efficiency. When Bob spoke about offshore sailing at the yacht club, members took notes. When he recommended a piece of equipment or a maintenance procedure, sailors listened. His sailing partner and longtime friend, Dr. Sarah Chen, 49, brought a different but equally valuable skill set to their partnership. As an emergency room physician at UC San Diego Medical Center, Sarah had spent 15 years making life-or-death decisions under extreme pressure. Her ability to remain calm in crisis situations had earned her recognition from colleagues and saved countless lives in the ER. On the water, she applied the same methodical, evidence-based approach that made her such an exceptional doctor. Sarah didn't just learn sailing procedures, she understood the medical and physiological reasons behind every safety protocol. Together, they were the kind of crew that other sailors aspired to be. Bob's technical expertise complemented Sarah's crisis management skills perfectly. They had sailed together for over 8 years, accumulating more than 50,000 nautical miles of experience together, including 3 Pacific crossings and 2 Atlantic circuits. Other sailors often joked that Bob and Sarah were so prepared, so thorough in their planning and execution, that they could probably sail safely through a hurricane. Their dream had been crystallizing for nearly a decade, a circumnavigation that would combine Bob's passion for technical sailing challenges with Sarah's desire to provide medical services to remote island communities. They had spent 5 years meticulously planning their route, studying weather patterns, researching visa requirements, and most importantly, preparing their vessel. The Maritime Dawn, a 1998 Beneteau Oceanis 461, had been transformed from a comfortable coastal cruiser into an offshore passage-making machine under Bob's exhaustive refit program. Every system on the boat had been upgraded, tested, and redundantly backed up. The electrical system featured dual batteries, solar panels, wind generator, and diesel generator. Navigation equipment included 3 GPS units, paper charts for their entire route, and a celestial navigation kit that Bob had spent 2 years mastering. Safety equipment exceeded Coast Guard requirements by 300%. 2 life rafts, 4 EPIRBs, 3 VHF radios, satellite communication system, and enough emergency supplies to survive at sea for 6 weeks. The boat's structural integrity had been verified by 3 separate marine surveyors, and Bob had personally replaced or reinforced every through-hull fitting, seacock, and hull penetration. The financial commitment matched their emotional investment. Bob had taken early retirement from his engineering firm, liquidating his 401k to fund the refit and first 2 years of cruising. Sarah had negotiated a leave of absence from the hospital, giving up her partnership track and a 6-figure salary for the chance to realize their shared dream. They estimated the total investment at just over $280,000. Their combined life savings, retirement funds, and the equity from Sarah's San Diego condo. The departure from San Diego on November 1st, 2019, represented the culmination of years of preparation and sacrifice. Their first passage destination was French Polynesia, a 300 nautical mile voyage that would take them through some of the Pacific's most challenging waters. But for Bob and Sarah, this wasn't a leap into the unknown. It was the logical next step in a carefully orchestrated plan. They had sailed this exact route twice before, once as crew on other boats and once as delivery skippers. They knew every weather pattern, every navigational hazard, every safe harbor along the way. The first 2 weeks of the passage unfolded like a textbook example of offshore sailing. Bob's meticulous weather routing kept them in favorable conditions, with consistent trade winds pushing them west at an average speed of 6.5 knots. Sarah's daily medical check protocols ensured they both remained healthy and alert. Their communication schedule with the Coast Guard and family members was executed with military precision. Position reports every 12 hours, weather observations transmitted to routing services, and daily check-ins with Bob's brother in Seattle. Other sailors monitoring their progress on tracking websites commented on the textbook nature of their passage. The Maritime Dawn was making excellent time while avoiding the worst weather systems. Their course showed the steady, confident line of experienced navigators, and their regular radio communications demonstrated the kind of professional seamanship that safety experts always recommended. Bob's last weather analysis, transmitted to fellow sailors on the Pacific Cruising Network, was a masterpiece of meteorological interpretation that accurately predicted conditions 5 days in advance. The only minor challenge they had encountered was a small electrical problem with their autopilot system, which Bob had diagnosed and repaired within 4 hours using spare parts from his extensive inventory. The repair was documented in their ship's log with characteristic thoroughness. Day 12, through 800 hours, autopilot drive unit replaced. System tested and functioning normally. Spare unit available if needed. Sarah's medical log showed both crew members in excellent health, with no seasickness, injuries, or fatigue issues. On the morning of November 18th, the Maritime Dawn was positioned approximately 800 nautical miles southwest of San Diego, making steady progress through moderate seas under partially cloudy skies. The weather forecast showed stable conditions for the next 48 hours, with winds from the northeast at 12-15 knots and wave heights of 3-4 feet. Perfect sailing conditions for their route to the Marquesas Islands. Bob's Aero 600 weather observation, transmitted to the National Weather Service as part of the Volunteer Weather Reporting Program, painted a picture of ideal sailing conditions. Barometric pressure steady at 30. 15 inches, air temperature 74 degrees Fahrenheit, water temperature 72 degrees. Visibility unlimited. His final words to the Weather Service were, "Conditions continue favorable for our passage, maintaining course 245 degrees true at 6.2 knots. Next scheduled report at 1800 UTC. Sarah's morning medical check, logged as always in their daily routine, showed both crew members alert, hydrated, and physically capable. Her last personal entry, discovered months later when investigators accessed her cloud-backed medical journal, reflected the contentment of someone living their dream. Day 17 at sea. Bob and I have found our rhythm out here. The boat is performing beautifully, and I'm reminded every day why we worked so hard to make this possible. We're living proof that careful preparation pays off. Tomorrow we should cross the halfway point to the Marquesas. But at approximately 10:30 hours Pacific time, something went catastrophically wrong aboard the Maritime Dawn. The first indication that their perfect passage had turned into a nightmare came from an automated satellite beacon activation recorded by search and rescue services. Unlike a manually activated distress signal, this beacon began transmitting automatically, a sign that it had been deployed by violent motion or impact, possibly indicating that the boat had been overwhelmed by a sudden emergency. The signal lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds before cutting off completely. When the Coast Guard cutter Steadfast reached the beacon's last known position 36 hours later, they found a debris field that told a story of catastrophic destruction. Pieces of the Maritime Dawn's distinctive blue hull were scattered across a quarter-mile area of ocean, along with fragments of sails, rigging, and personal equipment. The largest piece of wreckage was a section of the boat's transom, bearing the vessel's name and documentation numbers, indisputable proof that the yacht had been completely destroyed. What baffled investigators was the absence of the life rafts, survival equipment, and emergency beacons that they knew were aboard. Bob's obsessive preparation had included 2 separate life raft systems, multiple emergency beacons, and enough survival gear to sustain 4 people for a month. Yet none of this equipment was found in the debris field, suggesting that whatever happened to the Maritime Dawn occurred so quickly that the crew had no opportunity to deploy their emergency systems. The Coast Guard's initial theory focused on a possible collision with a large vessel or an underwater object like a shipping container. The scattered debris and complete destruction of the hull seemed consistent with a high-speed impact that would have instantly incapacitated both crew members. But this theory collapsed when investigators analyzed shipping traffic data for the area and found no large vessels within 200 nautical miles of the Maritime Dawn's position at the time of the disaster. A second theory suggested a catastrophic failure of the boat's pressurized propane system, which could have caused an explosion powerful enough to destroy the vessel. Bob's meticulous maintenance records, however, showed that the propane system had been completely rebuilt just 6 months earlier, with all components tested and certified by a licensed marine gas technician. Moreover, the debris pattern wasn't consistent with an explosion. Pieces of the hull showed clean breaks and stress fractures rather than blast damage. The mystery deepened when investigators recovered the Maritime Dawn's emergency position indicating radio beacon, EPIRB, from the debris field. These devices are designed to survive catastrophic boat destruction and continue transmitting for up to 48 hours. But the Maritime Dawn's EPIRB had suffered damage that prevented it from transmitting beyond the initial automatic activation. Forensic analysis of the device revealed impact damage consistent with high-velocity collision, but still provided no clues about what the yacht had struck. For 8 months, the loss of the Maritime Dawn remained an unsolved mystery that haunted the sailing community. The Coast Guard's official report listed the cause as unknown catastrophic failure, with recommendations for improved emergency beacon design and better tracking of debris hazards in shipping lanes. Safety experts used the incident to advocate for mandatory daily check-in protocols for offshore sailors, while insurance companies quietly began requiring additional safety equipment for boats undertaking long passages. Bob's brother, Michael Mackenzie, refused to accept the official conclusion. As a retired NTSB investigator with 30 years of experience in accident reconstruction, Michael knew that catastrophic failures always left forensic evidence that could be interpreted by trained specialists. Using his contacts in the maritime investigation community, he quietly commissioned a private analysis of the Maritime Dawn debris, hoping to find answers that might provide closure for both families and potentially prevent similar tragedies. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a piece of debris that had initially been classified as miscellaneous boat hardware by Coast Guard investigators. Dr. James Patterson, a marine engineering specialist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, was examining high-resolution photographs of the debris when he noticed something that previous investigators had missed. A small bronze fitting, partially corroded and encrusted with marine growth, displayed a distinctive failure pattern that Patterson had seen only once before, in a catastrophic sinking off the coast of Maine 15 years earlier. The fitting was a through-hull valve, also known as a seacock, one of several bronze fittings that allow water to enter and exit a boat's hull for various systems like engine cooling, cockpit drains, and head discharge. Patterson's analysis revealed that this particular seacock had failed not from external impact, but from internal corrosion that had weakened the valve body until it could no longer withstand normal water pressure. The failure pattern was unmistakable to Patterson's trained eye. The bronze casting showed classic dezincification corrosion, a process where zinc is leached from bronze alloys when exposed to salt water over time. This type of corrosion weakens the metal from the inside out, leaving fittings that appear solid from the exterior but are actually hollow shells of copper that can catastrophically fail without warning. When Patterson shared his findings with Michael Mackenzie, the implications were immediately clear. If a through-hull valve had failed completely while the Maritime Dawn was under sail in moderate seas, water would have poured into the hull through a hole approximately 2 inches in diameter. At 6 knots, the yacht would have been moving fast enough to create significant water pressure at the failed through hull, potentially allowing hundreds of gallons of seawater to enter the boat every minute. The location of the failed fitting provided the final piece of the puzzle. Based on the debris pattern and the specific type of bronze used in the fitting, Patterson determined that the failure had occurred at the cockpit drain through hull, located near the boat's waterline on the starboard side. This fitting would have been underwater whenever the boat heeled to starboard under sail, which, given the prevailing wind conditions and the Maritime Dawn's course, would have been most of the time during their passage. Bob's maintenance logs, subpoenaed from his estate, revealed the tragic irony that made this disaster so preventable. The cockpit drain-through hulls were original equipment from when the boat was manufactured in 1998, 21 years old at the time of the sinking. Bob's thorough refit had included replacement of the engine cooling through hulls, the head discharge through hulls, and the galley sink through hull. But the cockpit drains, because they were considered less critical systems, had been left with the original fittings. The maintenance log entry that sealed the tragedy was dated March 15, 2019, just 8 months before the disaster. Cockpit drain seacocks showing surface corrosion. Add to replacement list for next haul-out. Current operation acceptable. Bob had identified the problem, recognized that the fittings needed replacement, but had made the same fatalistic decision that thousands of boat owners make every year, to postpone a minor repair until the next scheduled maintenance period. The final evidence came from the Maritime Dawn's insurance survey, conducted just 3 weeks before their departure. The surveyor's report noted minor surface corrosion on cockpit drain fittings and recommended replacement at owner's convenience. The survey classified this as a cosmetic issue rather than a safety concern, and the insurance company had approved the boat for offshore sailing without requiring the repairs. Patterson's reconstruction of the disaster revealed why Bob and Sarah had no opportunity to save themselves or their vessel. When the cockpit drain through hull failed, it created a 2-inch hole in the hull that would have admitted water at a rate of approximately 400 gallons per minute under sailing conditions. The Maritime Dawn's bilge pumps, even if they had activated immediately, could handle only 50 gallons per minute, less than 1/8 of the water intrusion rate. Within 2 minutes of the initial failure, the boat's electrical system would have been compromised by rising water in the bilge, disabling the pumps, navigation equipment, and radio systems. The rapid water ingress would have made the yacht increasingly unstable, preventing Bob and Sarah from accessing their life rafts or emergency equipment. By the 4th minute, the Maritime Dawn would have lost all buoyancy and begun her final plunge to the ocean floor. The Coast Guard's investigation into through-hull failures revealed the scope of this hidden danger. Bronze seacocks manufactured before 2010 are particularly susceptible to dezincification corrosion, especially in warm saltwater environments. The process is invisible from the outside. Fittings that appear perfectly functional can be 90% corroded internally, waiting for just the right combination of pressure and stress to fail catastrophically. Testing conducted by the American Boat and Yacht Council found that 67% of boats over 15 years old have at least one through-hull fitting that shows significant internal corrosion. Most disturbing, 23% of tested boats had fittings that were classified as imminent failure risks, weakened to the point where they could fail at any time without warning. The testing also revealed that many boat owners and even professional surveyors lack the knowledge and equipment to properly assess through-hull fitting integrity. Bob's story became the catalyst for the most comprehensive through-hull safety campaign in maritime history. The Coast Guard issued Safety Alert Joe 120, titled "The $50 Fitting That Could Kill You," which detailed the Maritime Dawn disaster and provided specific guidance on through-hull inspection and replacement procedures. Marine insurance companies began requiring through-hull pressure testing for boats over 10 years old, and sailing organizations worldwide incorporated through-hull maintenance into their safety curricula. The ultimate irony of the Maritime Dawn disaster wasn't just that a $50 fitting killed 2 experienced sailors and destroyed a $250,000 yacht. It was that Bob McKenzie, with his engineering background and obsessive attention to detail, would have immediately replaced the corroded through hulls if he had understood the true nature of the threat. His maintenance philosophy had always been, when in doubt, replace it. But like most sailors, he'd been taught to view through-hull fittings as low-priority maintenance items that could safely be postponed. Sarah's final medical journal entry, recovered from cloud storage, included a reflection that now reads as a heartbreaking prophecy. Out here on the ocean, every small decision can have enormous consequences. Bob and I have learned to respect that fact, and it's kept us safe through thousands of miles of sailing. I think that's the most important lesson we can share with other sailors. Nothing is too small to matter when you're far from shore. The maritime engineering community now uses the Maritime Dawn case study as a textbook example of how catastrophic failures develop over time through the interaction of material degradation, environmental stress, and human decision-making biases. The disaster demonstrates how experienced sailors can fall victim to the same psychological trap that causes most preventable accidents. The normalization of deviance, where small problems are repeatedly deferred until they become catastrophic failures. Bob's brother, Michael, established the Mackenzie Chen Maritime Safety Foundation to ensure that their deaths would prevent similar tragedies. The foundation provides free through-hull testing services to boat owners and has developed educational programs that teach sailors to identify and prioritize hidden safety risks. Their motto, taken from Bob's maintenance philosophy, captures the essence of what the Maritime Dawn disaster teaches us about sailing safety. When in doubt, fix it today. Tomorrow might be too late. Ndaiyi, the Maritime Dawn, now rests in approximately 14,000 feet of water, her hull scattered across the abyssal Pacific floor. But the legacy of Bob McKenzie and Dr. Sarah Chen lives on in the thousands of sailors who have learned from their tragedy. Every boat owner who tests their through-hull fittings, every sailor who replaces corroded bronze before it fails, every marine surveyor who probes beneath the surface of seemingly minor problems, they are all part of ensuring that the Maritime Dawn's final voyage serves a purpose beyond tragedy. The lesson is as simple as it is profound. In sailing, as in life, there are no minor repairs when you're far from shore. The $50 fitting that you postpone replacing today could be the one that takes your boat to the bottom tomorrow. Bob and Sarah discovered this truth too late to save themselves, but their story has already saved countless other lives by teaching sailors the most important maintenance principle of all. Every small problem on a boat is a big problem, waiting for the right moment to prove it. The Coast Guard's final safety bulletin on the Maritime Dawn disaster concluded with words that every sailor should memorize. Through-hull fittings are not decorative accessories. They are life-critical safety systems that deserve the same attention as life rafts and emergency beacons. The ocean doesn't care if your fitting looks fine from the outside. It only cares whether that fitting can withstand the pressure when you need it most. Don't bet your life on a $50 piece of bronze that might already be planning to kill you. Every experienced sailor who reads the Maritime Dawn investigation report comes away with the same chilling realization. We all have that $50 fitting on our boat. The question isn't whether it exists, it's whether we'll replace it before it replaces us.